All right, so y'all should be seeing my question number 1 right now. Review for test 2. So y'all, here's the question. Is this function even, odd, or neither?
Even.
Now, the easiest way to tell on this, if it's an odd function, it'll touch the x-axis odd number of times, and it's also symmetric to the origin. If it's an even function, it touches the x-axis even number of times, and it's symmetric to the y-axis. Else it'll be neither. So on that one, we would say what?
Even.
So that is definitely even, touches the x-axis twice. So then we move to the next one. All right, let me let more people in real quick. All righty. All right, so they're giving me a function, g of x plus 3 squared plus 2. They want me to describe how to get this from the basic graph. So the basic graph is on them sheets I sent y'all in the email one time. So the basic graph on this is the x squared graph. So you would click in the box and punch in your x, and then go down here and get your exponent and put in your 2. So now, that plus 3 inside them parentheses, anytime the number's inside parentheses, it moves left or right. Positive numbers move it left, negative numbers will move it right. So since that 3 is positive, it's going to move it left 3 units. So click the box and click left. Now the number at the end, the plus 2, positive numbers go up, negative numbers will go down. So that does your vertical shift. So here it says blank 2 units. Since that's positive, it's going to go up 2 units. Then you're going to click the graph that. Now remember, this is the one where you had to use the slide controls. So let's click the enlarge our graph. So on my graph, I first start, since that's x squared, I'm going to use the x squared tool. Click that, and then click on your graph anywhere. I usually just click it right in the middle, and it's going to draw the parabola for you. You're going to use this vertical shift, horizontal shift down here to move that graph. So we went left 3 units. So on the horizontal, move that to -3. On the vertical, we went up 2 units. So turn the vertical to a +2. And if you noticed, it moved my graph left and up for me. Okay. So then you would save that, check your answer. Well, you won't be able to check it on a review, but move on to the next question, okay? Question on that.
How did you get the vertical and horizontal thing to pop up?
Once you click that tool for the U-shaped graph and you click the graph, it pops up the box for you.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Now this one here, they just gave me 4 pictures to pick out of. So they're telling me I'm going to start with the graph of square root of x. And under mine, I got what, x plus 5. Since that x plus 5 is under that radical, we treat it like it's in parentheses, which means that's going to move left or right. Anytime it's inside the parentheses and it's a positive number being added to the x, it's going to move me left. So then down here, we would say shift it left. And then I guess in the box, we would have to put 5. So we're going to shift it left 5 units. So only one of these graphs was moved left. A was moved left. B got moved right. C got moved up. And D got moved down. So they got all the moves. You got to watch for them. But we know ours moved left because it was under that radical. So we would have to go with our A on that one. Now remember, all these graphs y'all can graph on that calculator to make sure your picture looks like it when you're done, okay? And if you notice, all these basic graphs start right into origin. So that's how you know these went left, right, or whatever, okay?
I have a quick question about that. Do we change the settings for 20 by 20?
You
our graph?
can if you want it to look exactly like their picture. And let me show you. Let me pull up my calculator real quick and I'll show you how to do that, okay? So we're going to graph square root of x plus 5. And we want our window to match theirs, Richard. So let me share my calculator here.
Okay.
So y'all should be seeing my TI-84. So I'm going to go to y equals and get my function put in there real quick. So let me clear that one. So square root is over here on the left side. It's got to hit the second button and then the x squared. That'll pull your square root up. And then I had what, an x plus 5? So x plus 5. Now, I want it to look exactly like theirs. So hit that window button by the y equals. Hit the window button. And where these got -10 and 10 for the x min and x max and the y min and y max, change that to -20 and 20. So I'm going to make that a -20, enter, +20, enter. And then it's enter until you get to y minimum, make that a -20, enter, and then y max, 20. So once you got that window set, Richard, you just hit graph and you should get a picture that looks pretty much like what they got on their paper. And then now you can notice it sort of shifted me left 5 units and drew my line for us, okay? Now, if you want it to go back to a 10 by 10 graph, you can hit zoom and number 6 for standard, and it'll put it back as a 10 by 10, okay? But yeah, really on either way on that, and Richard, I could sort of tell that that thing did shift me over left on my graph, so I'd be good to go, okay? All right, y'all, let me share back to our
Thank you.
test here. So they're not too bad, and it's fun learning all this stuff on them calculators because it'll help y'all definitely in the future when you need them, use them again, you know. All right, so we moved it left. We're going to move on. There should be one more doing these shifts. Now notice this one. I got a negative x minus 3 in parentheses squared plus 4. So we start with a graph of x2. It says shifted blank units. So that little tree there, since it's negative and it's in the parentheses, is going left or right. Anytime it's negative, it's going to go right 3. So we're shifting right 3 units. That negative in the very front is going to reflect it across the x-axis. Never answer y-axis on these questions because we do not reflect across the y-axis until we hit chapter 9 material, okay? And then the only move left is what that 4 is doing. So since that 4 is positive, it's going to shift me up 4 units. Now I think this one you got to check your answer before it lets you do the graph, okay? Oh, maybe we don't have to graph this one. Okay, so we get to move on. It just wanted the moves on that, okay? So here, find the zeros of this function. I'm going to write that down, and I'll show you how I would work that. So f of t equals t squared plus 11t plus 30. So let me go to the overhead cam. Now, y'all got 2 ways for sure to solve this. You can solve this by factoring, Or you could use the quadratic formula on this. Quadratic formula solves any quadratic equation like this. So I like factoring, and I want y'all to get used to factoring more. So I'm going to solve that by setting this equal to 0. So to factor it, this is going to factor into 2 parentheses. In the front of both of these parentheses, t squared would make this a t and a t. Since this 30 is positive, both of these factors will have the same sign as the middle number. So those will both be positive. Now, if this 30 was positive and 11 was negative, I'd have made both of these negative, okay? So anytime that last sign's positive, you got like signs on your factors. All right, so y'all finish this factoring out. Do y'all know any factors of 30 that I can add to give me 11?
5 and 6.
5 and 6. So we're going to put that 5 and 6 in there. Now, at this point, we got it factored, so now we set each of these factors equal to 0 because that's where the 0 product rule comes in. And that's why 0 is the only number that you can guarantee that one of these factors is a 0, okay? So that helps me to come down and set both of these equal to 0 so I can solve them for their solutions. So the first one, we're just going to subtract 5 from both sides. And I get t is a -5. Second equation, you subtract 6 from both sides and get t equals a -6. If you punch this on your if you did this by the quadratic formula or you used the calculator program, it would have gave you -5 and -6. Factoring, you just have to go through and get your signs changed. But the quad formula will actually give you the final answers, okay? All right, so now we can go back, punch in 2 answers. All right, so let me think. I got what, -5 and -6. So I'm just going to punch them in real quick. And y'all, I'll tell you what else you got to watch for on there. On the keyboard, the period and comma are right next to each other. So if you accidentally put a period in for that instead of a comma, it's going to mark it wrong. So review your test when it's done. And if you put a period there by accident, I will change that and give you credit, okay? And I'm just looking to see if you got me that -5 and -6 on that one. All right, this one. I got f of x equals 3x squared minus a x plus a 2. So I'm going to go work this one. Now, here's the thing on this one. If we're going to be able to factor this, since you got a number in front, you multiply 3 times 2, which is 6. If I'm going to be able to factor that, I need to find factors of 6 that'll add to get me a 1 or -1. And there's no factors of 6 that'll add to get a 1. Right, 3 and 2, although they subtract to give you 1, since that last one's positive, they got to add. So this one does not factor. So the only choice on this one is the quadratic formula. So we must use quad on this one. So the quadratic formula has x equals -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So here's the question. Is everybody using the calculator program for this, or are y'all working it by hand? Anybody?
Both.
So I'm going to actually work this by hand then, okay? That way y'all can actually see it. And remember, you can use that calculator program and it'll spit it out too. So A was 3, B was -1, and C was a +2. So let's put them in our formula here. So that's going to give me x equals negative b, which is a -1, plus or minus square root b squared, which is -1 squared, minus 4 times a, which was 3, and c, which was 2, all over 2 times a, which was 3. All right, so let me pull down so y'all can see that whole screen. All right, so let's start working on this. Negative times -1 makes that a +1, plus or minus. -1 squared is a +1. Anything you square better be positive at that point. All right, the whole right side's getting multiplied together. There's one negative over there, so that will stay negative. And then let's see what we get. 4 times 3 is 12, times 2 is 24. All of that's over 6. So the only thing you can do now is work under your little radical. So I get 1 plus or minus square root. 1 minus 24 is a -23, all over 6. So y'all, here's the thing. At this point, we would try to simplify that radical like I showed you by taking out the perfect squares. I'm trying to catch them coming back on. All right, let me make sure I got them all on here. All righty. Okay, so we got to simplify the radical, but this 23 does not have any factors that are perfect squares because 23 is actually a prime number, which means we still got to do something to that because that negative's under there. You cannot keep a negative under a square root radical. So my next step, if you remember when we had these negatives under here, we made this a 1 plus or minus square root of -1 times the square root of 23, all of that now over 6. So I brought this negative out as a -1. But now, what can I replace that square root of -1 with? All right, y'all gonna make me do it. How about the I for imaginary? Then you bring down that square root of 23 and put that all over 6. So y'all listen, if you got a negative under that radical, you got to break it out as a square root of -1, and then you got to turn that into the I. Just like pi represents 3.1 something, that I represents square root of -1. Now, anytime you got i's left in your answers, you have to break this into 2 fractions. You're going to put the 1 over 6 plus or minus I square root of 23 over 6. The I answers have to be split into 2 fractions. Remember, this is the real part, the 1/6, and then the I part is the imaginary part. All right? Woo, so let me see how we're going to go plug this back into the math lab. All right, so I'm going to hit the, and see right here it says express complex numbers in terms of I. So that's what's telling me to have these split. All right, so we got 1 divided by 6 for the first fraction. Well, I need to click in the box. So 1 divided by 6, arrow over. And then plus or minus, I'm going to use this plus and minus they give me down here on the bottom. Now, I'm going to hit this fraction. On top, I'm going to put my I, which they give me down here. My square root, under the square root is a 23. And then I'm going to click to the bottom and put my denominator, which was a 6. Now, you can put the I in the front or the back of that radical. If you put the I in the back of the radical, let me show you what you want to do. You cannot put it under there with that 23. You got to put it outside the radical. So see, the radical stops. If you do the 23 and the I without arrowing out of that radical, it'll put the I under the radical and count it wrong, okay? All right, so what's next? We should be getting to some word problems in a second. All right, this one's not bad. They gave me a graph here. They want to know what the x-intercepts are. Well, the x-intercepts are where these 2 points are crossing the x-axis. So we got one here and one here. So this x-intercept looks like it's at -1. So that one would be parentheses, -1, comma, 0, close parentheses. X-intercepts have zeros for those y values, okay? Now, put your comma, start your second parentheses, because on the right side we got an x-intercept, and that looks like it's crossing at 2 there. Well, hang on, let me see. That might be 3. Let's see. We're 1, 2. Yeah, it's at 3. That's crossing at 3. And if we need to, we can always zoom that in. So now y'all see that better. So I can tell that's going across at 3. So that point would be 3, comma, 0. Close those parentheses. Well, let me click back in the box. So 3, comma, 0. Close parentheses. But notice, you do need a comma in between these two ordered pairs, okay? So the solutions, well, we learned that the solutions to these problems are the same values that I get for the x-coordinate of the x-intercepts. Well, that means the solutions are going to be -1, comma, 3. Okay, so the x values are the solutions. You got to include the zeros when you're looking at the intercepts. Okay, so y'all, then we move to 8. Whoops, let me go back. I hit 9. I want to go to 8. I'm going to write this down. So they're telling me I got a wire stretched from the ground to the top of an antenna tower. That wire is 30 feet long. Then it tells me the height of the tower is 6 feet greater than a distance D from the base to the end of the wire. So the base will be D, and then the tower will be D plus 6. They want to know the distance D, so I'm going to find D, and then I want to find the height of that tower. So let's stop and go to the camera. All right, y'all, so here's my tower. And I got a wire coming from the ground to the top of the wire. They told me it was 30. Then they said, hey, the height of this tower here from the ground to the top of it is 6 feet greater than the distance D from the base of the tower to the wire. So this distance was D, that's D plus 6. To solve this, since this makes a right triangle, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. C has to always be that hypotenuse, no matter what. The side across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. Always got to be C. It don't matter which one of these you pick for A and B, okay? So I'll just come out like they look. For A, I'm going to use D. So that's going to give me D squared. Plus this side is d plus 6 squared. That's going to equal my hypotenuse, which is 30 squared. So, first thing you got to do is square that d plus 6. So come over on the side and write d plus 6 2 times. That's what it means when you square a d plus 6. FOIL this out. D times d is d squared. D times 6 is 6d. 6 times d is 6d. 6 times 6 is 36. Y'all watch out on that, because I had a lot of people putting 12 here instead of 36 because they were trying to add those 6s. No, no, no. You're not adding those. You're multiplying those, okay? Now, come down and add like terms. So I get d squared plus 12d plus 36. I'm now going to replace d plus 6 squared with this. So I bring down that d squared, bring in my d squared plus 12d plus 36. All that's going to equal 30 times 30 should give you what? 900. All right, so first, you got like terms on that side. Add them together. D squared plus d squared is 2d squared plus 12d plus 36 equals 900. All right, look at this. Since you got a squared term, this is now quadratic, and we need everything on one side equal to 0. So your next move, you got to subtract 900 from both sides. So we now get 2d squared plus 12d minus, so let's see, what is 900 minus that 36? That's going to give me a negative 864. All this is now equal to 0. So, if I was going to do this one by hand instead of using my calculator, I would probably simplify this one more step before I do the quad formula to it. Because if you look at all these numbers, there's one number everybody divides by in this whole equation. All these will divide by 2. So anytime you got a bunch of even numbers, divide that thing and make it a little smaller. Because 2 divided by 2 gives me 1d squared, plus 12 divided by 2 gives me 6d, minus 864 divided by 2 gives me a negative 432, all equal to 0. So we can divide by any number we want as long as we do it to everything on both sides, okay? So now quad, A is 1, B is 6, C is negative 432. Now y'all, here's the thing. If I was doing quad on the calculator, I would have put these numbers right here in, 212, negative 864. But doing it by hand, I didn't want big numbers there, okay? All right, y'all, so I'm going to go right here and start my formula. So negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So b was 6, so it goes here and here. A was 1, it goes here and here. C was a negative 432. That's going to be tight right there. So that's negative 432 I'm putting in there, okay? All right, so here we go. That's going to make that a negative 6. So that negative, all it's doing is changing the sign of whatever you had in the middle, okay? Plus or minus. 6 times 6 is 36. And y'all, this time I got 2 negatives on that side. So that's going to make that all positive. So let's see, I got 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times that 432 is going to give us 1,728. All of this over, 2 times 1 is 2. All right, so here we go. We got -6 plus or minus. 1728 plus 36 is going to give us 1,764. All of that over 2. All right, so this problem, you're going to get -6 plus or minus. These are going to be perfect squares, so use your calculator and find the square root of 1764. You would hit second x squared, put in 1764, and that should come out as a perfect number. So you're going to get 42 all over 2. Now, do you see something? These all three can divide by before I simplify everything. 6, 42, and 2 are all even numbers. They'll all divide by 2. So -6 divided by 2 gives me -3, plus or minus 42 divided by 2 gives me 21. So we're going to use this to get the 2 answers to this equation. The first answer is going to be -3 plus 21. So you used the plus the first time. So -3 plus 21 gives you 18. The second answer, you're going to do -3 minus 21. So you use the subtraction on the second time. -3 minus 21 is -24. So here's my questions. You got 2 possible answers. Which answer am I going to use for D?
18.
18, because distance has to be a positive number. You're automatically going to kick out those negative numbers when you're talking about distance, okay? So here's the thing. If that distance is 18, how tall is my tower?
24.
24, because it said right here, D plus 6. 18 plus 6 is definitely 24. Well, that's a tricky problem if you're doing this quad by hand, okay? That's why we give y'all that formula to sort of help you out, because you're going to get big numbers on the quad. But on this problem, it's always going to be a perfect square that comes out as a number, okay? It's not going to be a radical type answer on this one.
Good.
All right, so we said 18 and 24, so we got to go put that in our math lab now. Now, those ones where they say find the zeros, yeah, they're going to hit you with some radical answers on those. All right, so we said the distance you said was 18.
And I have a question. Is there going to be one where you'll show us how to do this with the calculator?
Like with the quad formula?
Yes.
So let me show you on that problem. Let me go share real quick. So to do this one on your calculator, y'all should be seeing my calculator. You had to download that program I sent y'all. And if you downloaded that program, you would click program and you would just find your quad, which is number 4 for me. So hit 4 and then you hit enter to get it started. And it asks for those 3 numbers. So I could have started it when I had a 2 for A, a 12 for the B, and then I think I was a -864. So see on quad, I'll just use that and not even worry about simplifying it if I was using this. But you'll still get the 2 answers I got, 18 and -24, which would tell me, hey, we need to kick out that -24 answer because we're looking at the distance, okay?
I have a question.
Yeah, I hear you.
What if you get a square root as your answer and you can't like unsquare it.
So on this question about the wire, you shouldn't get a radical answer at all. So if you get a radical answer when you're doing the quad on this problem, you know you did something bad. Okay? Because this problem's designed for that to come out as a perfect number, so you can add it to your D and find those distances, okay? So on the wire one, if you get a radical, you don't want that. Now, let me go back to the calculator again. You remember the problem? I don't have it written down, but I did one while ago where we had to find the zeros.
Yes.
And I think it was 3x squared minus x. I think it was plus 2. So my A would have been 3, B would have been -1, C was 2. So I'm going to use that program again. So A was 3, enter. B was -1, enter. And C was 2. Now, on the program, when you first hit enter, it'll jump right to it. If it's imaginary, it's going to jump right to those answers, okay? Now, when we wrote this program, we didn't have the little I option, the fancy one. So that big I is the same thing as that little fancy I by your decimal down there. We just didn't have that back in the day when we was making these. If you ever use quad and you get decimal answers and we want radicals, you got to hit enter one more time and it'll turn those decimals into actual radicals, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if I answered what you was asking, but I hope so.
I think I can get it figured out.
Where's the program link that you sent?
Oh, it was an email, my God, about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, I'll have to look through. Thank you.
It was two
It would have
Tuesdays
been,
ago.
I think it was on the Monday videos of last week. The ones I sent for Monday for that week 2 stuff, I think it was right in there. I sent a link, and then I sent a helper sheet to do the basic graphs with. Those were your attachments. And then in the email, I gave you a video that actually showed you how to download it into your calculator.
Okay,
received it on
awesome.
a
I'll go back and
Tuesday.
look for it. Thank you.
What was the other question I didn't hear?
I said we received it on a Tuesday, the email.
Okay, so last Tuesday the 13th?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so there you go, y'all. Look for the 13th on that email, and it should have all that in there.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so let me write this one down. I got a wall with a ladder leaning on it. And the foot of my ladder is 9 feet from the wall. So that's going to be that bottom. Then it tells me the height that the ladder reaches on the wall and the length of the ladder are consecutive integers. So if I let the height be x, then the ladder would be x plus 1. Consecutive integers means one number right after the next. So to go from 1 to 2, you add 1. To go from 2 to 3, you add 1. So that's the pattern. To go from one integer to the next is by adding 1. So let's go work this one out. It's really similar to the one I just did, but you'll see different things happening to this one. Okay, so my ladder's up against this wall here. The bottom of it, they said, was 9 feet from the base of the wall. The height of the wall and the ladder were consecutive integers, so I made this x and that x plus 1. Once again, we're going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This time c is going to be the x plus 1 side because that's my hypotenuse again. So I'm going to let this be a, so replace a with 9, square that. B is going to be the x, square that. That's going to equal c, which is the x plus 1 squared. So 9 times 9 is 81, plus my x squared. Now remember that right side, you got an x plus 1 squared, so you're going to have to come and FOIL that one. So both of these problems with the Pythagorean theorem, you got to FOIL somewhere or the other, okay? So here we go. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is x. 1 times x is another x. And then 1 times 1 is 1. I'm going to add like terms, so I get x squared plus 2x plus 1. That now replaces the right side. So x squared plus 2x plus 1. So here, my first move, since these have got these x squared terms, I need to try to get everything on one side equal to 0. So you always want to start with these x squared terms. Because watch what happens. I'm going to move this one to this side by subtracting x squared from both sides. But notice all that's left over here is 81. Over here, the x squared's canceled also. So that all that's left is a 2x plus 1. Anytime you got the same identical variable on either side with the same sign, they basically cancel when you solve these, okay? So that made this problem a lot nicer. I don't have to do all that quadratic formula stuff. I've only got one x. All I got to do is solve for that x, and I'll have that part done. So we're going to solve for x by subtracting 1. So 80 now equals 2x. And then to turn 2x's into 1x, we divide both sides by 2. So 80 divided by 2 gives me 40 equal to my 1x. So I now know that the height the ladder reaches on my wall is 40 feet. But guess what? This question, all they wanted to know is, how long is that ladder? In the ladder, I would take my 40, add the 1, and the ladder would be 41 feet, okay? Well, that's a pretty long ladder, though, so y'all just be careful. Your problem about this ladder, your x squareds are going to cancel just like mine. Every time I've done this problem, the x squareds cancel, and you only get one answer instead of two, okay? And I think that's all they asked for, so let me go back to that problem. Yeah, they just want to know the ladder, so right there we would come in and put our, what do we say, 41? And then move to the next. All right, so we're through some of the longer problems. All right, this problem I put on here because I wanted y'all to get some easy points. It says the vertex is, well, the vertex is sitting right there, and they're giving it to me. And that looks like, what, 4, 2 there? So let's zoom in and see. So they're giving me the point, and they're saying, hey, that's 4, 2. So that's your vertex. Just remember, put it in parentheses when you plug it in here. So parentheses, what's that, 4, 2? So 4, comma 2. Then what's the axis of symmetry? You got to be careful. Axis of symmetry has to be an equation, and it's always going to be x equals some number. What axis of symmetry? That x is equal to the x value of your vertex, which is 4. So you punch in a 4, because that x equals 4. That's where that cuts that in half. Then it says, what's the maximum or minimum value? Well, that always equals the y value of the vertex. So this has a minimum y value of 2. So put 2 in, and then you move to the next question. So that when that vertex is given to you, so I want y'all to get that, all right? All right, true or false? The graph of x minus 4 squared can be obtained by translating x squared left 4 units. So when you're inside the parentheses, it's going to move left and right. Did that negative move me left and make this true? Or does that negative 4 move me right 4 and make this false?
Right 4 and make it false.
It's going to make it false. Good job. So false and move on.
Okay, I missed on the question before that, the axis of symmetry. What was that?
So the axis of symmetry is x equals whatever that x value is.
Okay, thank you.
Because what that's doing is over here at this x value of 4 that they gave me, if you was to draw a dotted line right through the middle of that, going down that 4 on the, it would cut it in half. So that's why we just say, well, it's always equal to the x equals whatever that vertex is. All right, we got false on that. All right, this one. We're going to find the vertex. So let me write this down. It is a x squared minus 10x plus 24. So let's go to the CAM. I wish I had like a Siri. I could say Siri CAM, Siri MATLAB, Siri calculator, right? All right, so I'm going to start out by finding the vertex. So A is 1, B is negative 10, C is 24. To get the x coordinate of the vertex, you find negative B over 2A. So negative B over 2 times A. So B was negative 10, A was 1. So notice this is going to give me a positive 10 on top over 2, and 10 divided by 2 gives me a 5. So I now know the x coordinate is going to be 5. To find that y coordinate, you're going to find f of 5, which means put a 5 in for these two x's. So 5 squared minus 10 times 5 plus 24. That's going to give me 25 minus 10 times 5 is 50 plus 24. So let's add that and see what we get. So 25 minus 50 is a negative 25. Negative 25 plus 24 is negative 1. So my y value is a negative 1. So we now have pretty much everything we need to answer all these questions, knowing that vertex point right there. So let's go to MATLAB. All right, so I'm going to go up here first and put in my vertex. So I got to use my parentheses, remember? So parentheses. Why ain't you clicking? All right, I think it made it there. So what was it? 5, comma, negative 1, close parentheses. Now, determine if it has a min or maximum value. I always looked at that x squared term. Remember, if the x squared term is positive, you got a minimum. If the x squared term is negative, you have a max. Since that's a positive 1 in front, this is going to have a minimum. So come down and click on B. The minimum value is always equal to the y value, which is negative 1. All right, y'all, the range. The range is the y values. So if you was to graph this, you know that that point, 5, negative 1, is the minimum, which means negative 1 is going to be my minimum y value. Whoops, hang on, something happened here. All right, and the range we said, negative 1 is the minimum y value, and on these you gotta use a square bracket because you gotta include negative 1 as part of that range. So I think on my keyboard, right by the P, I can punch that and get my square bracket, punch in negative 1, comma. So here's the thing. If negative 1 is my minimum y value, and this parabola is opening upward, what's the range values headed off towards?
Infinity.
Yeah, and we got that right down here by the more. It says infinity. So punch in infinity. Now remember, infinity always has curvy parentheses. Your range will always have a bracket around that number and a parenthesis around that infinity. All right, then it wants to know where's it increasing. That's the x values. So since 5, -1 was my minimum value, anything after 5, this thing's going to go upward. So you're increasing, so let me get my parentheses, from that 5 all the way right, which is towards positive infinity. Whoops, did I put 2 infinities? Yeah, so infinity once and then close it. Now, increasing and decreasing always have parentheses because these points can't be both. So now, decreasing was coming in from the left on the x's until I hit that 5. So this one we would say would be coming in from negative infinity. And it's decreasing until it hits that 5. Man, I did it again, then I hit 2 infinities. All right, so infinity, comma, 5, close parentheses. All right, and I don't even think I got my comma there, did I? So, comma there. All right, so remember, range only worried about y values. Increasing and decreasing intervals are only worried about x values, okay? All right, then it would have you go on. All right, here's my little rocket, so we'll write this down so we can work in. All you need on this is that equation they're giving you. H of t equals -16t squared, that's my gravity, plus the 120t, which is my velocity, plus the 5. They want me to find how long it takes it to reach maximum height, and then what is that maximum height, okay? So let's go work this out because we're going to have to use the vertex for it. All right, so we know A is -16, B is 120, C equals 5. So I'm going to find that x coordinate. Now, really, x coordinate is going to be the time, okay? And that's going to equal -b over 2a. So the x coordinate is going to be your time. The y coordinate, which is the value, is going to be that height, okay? All right, so we got what? A negative times 120 over 2 times a -16. Now, since this is time, a negative divided by negative is going to make this all positive. So we need to see what 120 divided by 32 is going to give us. So 120 divided by 32 is going to give me 3.75. So it will take 3.75 seconds for my rocket to reach its maximum height. Now the y coordinate when I find it is going to be the height. That's going to equal f of 3.75. So we put that into the formula. 3.75 goes in for both of these t's. So -16 times 3.75 squared plus 120 times 3.75 plus 5. So y'all, I'm sort of lazy. I'm going to punch that on my calculator. If you do it by hand, all I can say is follow order of operations, all right? Now, I'm just going to punch it on my calculator like it looks. I got -16 parentheses 3.75 close parentheses and square that. Then it's plus 120 times 3.75, that's my x, close those parentheses, and then plus 5 at the end. So once I hit enter, my calculator is going to figure out my y coordinate, which is 230. So my rocket went a maximum height of 230, and it done it in 3.75 seconds. So we'll punch that in. So I'm going to skip punching them in so I can get more of this done for y'all. But right here, I would put my 3.75, and then right here, I'd put my 230. All right, the domain of this function, that is a radical. So let me show you what you're doing. So to find a domain of a radical, everything under the radical has to be greater than or equal to 1. So you're going to set 4x plus 1 greater than or equal to 1. Now, since we got greater than or equals, we got to use brackets around our numbers. Okay? So let's solve this. Subtract 1. Whoops, that's a 0 here. My bad. I was talking about 1. 4x plus 1 has to be greater than or equal to 0. But y'all, I accidentally wrote the 1. So set it to 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. I get 4x is greater than or equal to negative 1. Divide by 4. X is now greater than or equal to a negative 1/4. So if I was going to write that in set builder notation, I would have x such that x is greater than or equal to negative 1/4. So basically, you're looking for your answer that you got when you solve this, okay? Now, we should have an answer that looks just like this in the math lab now. So I got one. Now watch out, they try to use less thans up here and not equals, but we needed to see because ours was greater than or equal to, okay? If you put D on this, you will miss it 100% of the time, guaranteed. All right? So no D on that question. All right, this is the way we wanted you to graph. So punch that on your calculator, or you could use the fact that that -6 is under that radical. Anytime it's under the radical, it's going to move left or right. So since it's negative, it's going to move which way?
Right.
Right.
6.
So look, this one looks like it went down. B looks like it went right, and you can actually zoom it in a little bit and see that it did go right. C went left, and D went left. Well, heck, D went left and flipped. So the only one that would be moving right would be B, right? But y'all punch it on the calculator, and if you want to get the exact picture, zoom that window like I showed you, and it'll put you at a 20 by 20.
So for that last question, if the square root was a negative, instead of being greater than or equal to, would it be less than or equal to?
So this one right here, the only way that you'll have, say, numbers go the other way is if your x is negative to start with, and then you put in negative numbers to make it sort of positive. It would be on that side, but you're only going to keep it greater than or equal to 0 when you set them up, okay?
Okay, I meant the question before that, sorry.
Oh, okay. So let me see. I don't remember which one this one was. Yeah, so you can get less than or equals on these, but it would be something like 5 minus x. Those x have to start out negative to get this less than stuff, okay? If your x's start out positive like this, and they're staying positive, you're always going to have a greater than or equal.
Okay, what if it's 4x minus 1? That wouldn't change anything?
Also, let's see. So 4x minus 1, if you set that greater than or equal to 0, all it's going to do is make that a positive 1/4 instead of a negative 1/4.
Oh,
So you would still have, hey, x is greater than or equal to a positive 1/4 on that one, okay?
okay. Thank you.
No problem. Whoops. Oh, I didn't want to stop share. I wanted to move my homework problem. So let me get back on that. All right, so 15, we did that. That shifted me right, actually. So y'all, this is the same thing, but I can tell you, since that 2 is being subtracted, it's going to move me right. So there's only one of these pictures that looks like, well, I can't even tell on them. Woo, let me zoom some in. We know it ain't that one going left. So it's either got to be B or C. So let me zoom them in. And then I want to zoom in C too. So, man, you can barely tell, but this B looks like it moved left of the y-axis. Can y'all tell that? And then if you look at this
Yeah.
C, if you look at C, it barely went to the right. Because if you solve that, you'd get something like a 1/4. And you can sort of tell. So you want the one that moved right because that was being subtracted, okay? Ooh, I hate it when they give me numbers that are like right on these lines and then they're scaling it out bigger than they should. But you can just keep zooming that thing and you'll tell. All right, this is a piecewise function. So here's my question. If they gave me f of x equals x squared for any x's less than -2, they told me f of x equals 6x for -2 less than or equal to x less than 1, or they said, hey, f of x equals x minus 5 for any x is greater than or equal to 1, which one of these equations would I use to find f of 1? So y'all, here's the question. This 1 that we're putting in for our x, is that 1 less than -2? No.
It'll be
No,
the 6x.
no, it'll be the x minus 5.
Yeah, because see, this one says it's got to be less than 1. But if you go to this last one and put a 1 for the x, 1 greater than or equal to 1 makes that one true, right? So you would definitely have to go with x minus 5. So make sure your number, if it's one of the crossover numbers like 2 or 1, if it's equal to it, you got to make sure you got your lines under them to be equal, okay? All right, I think there's another one of these, finding values. Oh, same thing. Is it got any relative min or max? Now we're giving you the equation over here. So that's a mountain peak. So it's definitely going to be a maximum. Now it tells you here the relative maximum occurs at x equals. So what's my x bank code? That looks like 5.5. So you would put a 5.5 there. It has a value of, what a y value gives me the values. So let's zoom that in a little bit. So that one looks like 6.25. So that's my value, 6.25. It says, when is it increasing? Well, it's increasing on the left side because remember, it's going uphill left to right. So on the x's, it's coming in from -infinity until it gets about right here where this x value is. And the x value of that is the vertex, which is the 5.5. So one of these should be coming from -infinity to 5.5, which is C. It wants to know where it's decreasing. Well, that's where it's going downhill. So it starts at this x value right here, which was 5.5. And it's going downhill as I go out to the right towards infinity. So this one was 5.5 to to infinity. All right, y'all good on that? Just remember, when we're talking about increasing and decreasing, we're only concerned about those x values. So like if I was to say, what's the interval on your paycheck increasing? Hopefully that would be from 0 to 40 hours, right? All right, y'all, let's go. Let's see, we got 19 here. Oh, what did it say I didn't do? Oh, I didn't click it right here. That was a relative maximum. I put my values in, but I don't guess I clicked it. All right, so now it's going to let us move on. So, you got a piecewise function. I want you to tell me which equation I would use to find h of -8, and then we'll find that value. So it's -8 less than -3, in between -3 and 4, or greater than or equal to a +4.
Less than -3.
So we're going to use the -4 times x minus 17. So you're going to punch -4 times -8, which is 32. 32 minus 17 would give us 15 there. And then you come down here. Which one for h of 1? Top, middle, or bottom?
Middle.
Middle. But look right there. It tells me any number between -3 and less than 4 equals 4. So all you do is punch a 4 right there. That's like one of them little constant functions. It'd be like a straight line going across at that point, okay? H of 4. Which equation? 4a4.
The bottom.
Right, the bottom one, and 4 plus 3 would give you 7. So punch in the 7. And then which one for, is that a 9? Looks like a 9 to me. So which one for the 9?
The bottom one again.
So what's that? 9 plus 3 would give me, so punch in your 12, and then you're moving to the next one. And this is going to have that difference quotient, the f of x plus h. So we definitely going to work this one by hand. So let me get my function. It is f of x equals -4x squared plus 7x plus 2. All right, so I'm going to go to the camera. All right, so unfortunately, this one really can't be done on your calculator, but we give you the formula, which is f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. So if you were still needing to do 5.4 section homework, this is what you're doing to those problems, what I'm about to do here. All we got to really find is f plus x plus h, so we can have that part of the formula. They gave me the f of x, which is this trinomial here, and you always got an h on the bottom. So we want to find f of x plus h. So put an x plus h in for both of these x's. So I got -4 times x plus h squared plus 7 times x plus h plus 2. So write that, replace the two x's with an x plus h. So the first thing you got to do to this problem is figure out what is that x plus h squared. So you're going to come on the side and FOIL that. Now, whatever I get here on my x plus h squared is going to be the same thing you get for your x plus h squared. So once we figured out the x plus h squared, you can always use your notes to put what it is in there, okay? So it's going to be x squared plus hx plus hx plus h times h squared. Simplifying these like terms, you're going to get an x squared plus 2hx plus h squared. Anytime you have an x plus h squared, you're going to replace it with that. And I think on the homework, you got to do that about 2 or 3 times for 5.4, so you better remember that right there, okay? So let's put that in. X squared plus 2hx plus h squared. And then I'm just going to bring everybody else down at the moment, because all I really wanted to do to that problem on that first step was just hit that exponent, okay? Now I can do all my distributing. Distribute your -4, and then distribute your 7. So we get a -4x squared minus 8hx minus 4h squared plus 7 times x is 7x plus 7 times h is 7h plus my 2. You know what's sad about this? Do y'all see any like terms on that?
No.
No. So all of that is going to be my f of x plus h. So now we plug everything into our formula. And I'll show y'all more tricks about these. So f of x plus h we just figured out is -4x squared minus 8hx minus 4h squared plus 7x plus 7h plus 2. F of x they gave me a while ago, remember that's way up here. So they gave me f of x, which is -4x squared plus 7x plus 2. All of that's over my h still. So y'all check this out. If you do this right, everything in the second parentheses is going to cancel with its opposite in the first parentheses. The only things that will be left out of these first parentheses is all the terms that have a h in them. If it don't have a h in it, it's going to cancel with what's over here. So watch this. -4x squared. Well, a negative times a negative makes that a positive 4x squared, so they cancel. 7x and a 7x. This 7x cancels with this -7x when you subtract it. And then this positive 2 cancels with this when you subtract that 2. 100% of the time, everything in these second parentheses has to cancel. So even if you get these signs wrong, cancel it anyway, because it's got to, okay? So what's left out of the first parentheses? -8hx minus 4h squared plus the 7h all over h. So y'all, we're going to do one more thing, and that is simplify this. To simplify this, you divide everybody on top by that h. So h divided by h cancels. All that's left is -8x. And it's going to be minus 4 h squared divided by h. You would subtract the exponents basically, and 2 minus 1 would leave you 1h. So basically you're removing 1h from everybody on top. Now look at this plus 7. Look at these h's. H cancels with h, so it's gone. So when you divide by h, you're removing 1h from every one of your terms, and then you now have your final answer. So we would go back to Math Lab. Now, hey, put a star by this. This question is going to be on your final exam, one of these, okay? And it's just like this. So you now have 1 out of your 20 final exam questions. All right, let's see. We would go punch that in. So I got like a -8x minus 4h plus 7. I would punch that in. And y'all, that would be the end of our test here. So you would come over here and submit it. So I'm going to miss some because I didn't work on the problems. Those 2 that we missed, we're not worried about. So we're just going to submit it and be done. So I can close this. Alrighty, so do your review before you do your test. That'll get you really prepared for it. test ain't due till Sunday night. But I will start 8-1 material tomorrow, so I'll be sending videos. So I'm hoping to try to get y'all on track by delaying my 8-1 with my regular classes so that everybody can be on track together, okay? So I sent an 8-1 video last night. I will send 8-2 today because we're going to do 8-1 and 8-2 tomorrow to get y'all ready for that homework. That way we're not being a day behind. I can maybe keep y'all on pace with my in-class, okay? Well, I get talked out doing these review guides. So, did y'all still have questions on anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
One of the reviews that I've done, it's telling me I got the wrong answer, but I've tested it 3 different times and it seems to be giving me the same.
So this would be on your review quiz?
Yes, it's number 12.
Okay, I'm just gonna go look real quick and see what I got on you.
Okay.
So let me go to my, because I'm in Math Lab, I think, still. So let me see if it'll let me grade book y'all real quick.
I put all the information into the quad formula first and then got the vertex and symmetry and all that, and it says that it's wrong.
Okay, so let me look at it. So would
The
your
most
last
recent
attempt,
one.
the most recent?
Yes.
So it looks like you did one at 12:06 p.m.
Yes.
20th. So that'd be the date, right? So let me click on that. Yeah, it can't be but 1 or 2 questions you had in here. So let me look. Usually I can tell on these. So it looks like number 12 got us. And then part of 19. So let me get to 12.
Yeah, 19 was just inputted wrong into my calculator.
So while he's looking, does anybody else have an issue with Blackboard, like logging in to Blackboard?
In what way?
So on Blackboard,
Yeah.
the only way you can access Blackboard is through the portal. You got to log into your portal just like you would to get your email. Go over there by your email link and you'll see a Blackboard link. That's the only link that'll let y'all into Blackboard.
Yeah, sometimes it says I have an incorrect password, which I don't. And
If
then
you ever have that problem, just reset it. Go to the main portal page and just click that help button and reset it.
okay.
But if you're getting in, once you get into the portal, you won't need no more passwords to get into Blackboard. It's just getting into that portal.
Right, exactly. And that's
So
the
if
point.
you ever have that issue, click the help button
Yeah.
and reset your password real quick.
Okay.
All you got to do is put in your name, zip code, maybe the last 4 of your social, I think, and it'll let you reset that password, okay?
Okay.
Sometimes that can take
All right,
to like
so
12 hours to set.
Adrian,
Yes.
I'm writing down this last problem you worked on that number 12 real quick. And I'm gonna try to figure out, so how did you work them? By hand or was you?
I put it into the quad formula, A equals
All right,
1.
so I'm gonna go to my calculator.
Yep. B equals -6 and C equals 8.
So I'm gonna go quad. What'd you put for A?
1.
And then you put -6 for your B.
Yes. And then
Yeah.
C equals 8.
So 4-2. So let me see what's on your.
And it tells me it's 3 -1.
Oh, but look here. Here's the thing on this. You're doing vertex on this one. You're not looking for the zeros. So on this one, let me go back with you and let me get it back to my camera.
So I should have done negative b over 2a.
Negative b over 2a.
Okay.
So see, if we do that, we get negative 6 over 2 times 1, which will give me 6 over 2, which will give you that 3.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
so I just did the wrong formula.
That's all you did was the wrong formula. Now, if I was looking for zeros, perfect.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, because I was looking, I knew I had given you that program, so I was like, well, yeah, but they was actually wanting the vertex on that one, okay?
Yes, and the quad formula is very, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that thing get by hand on some of them big ones, you know, like I did with that 1784 a while ago. Trying to square root that. So y'all, let me stop this recording so I can get